So I've got a complicated one for you today. I am reviewing the Boox Palma. I put out a first impressions video for this thing a very long time ago, and I just have never gotten around to doing the full review, but this is it. It's finally happening, and I do have some thoughts with this device. So in typical fashion, I'm going to just give you my pros and my cons list. This will probably be a little bit chaotic. I apologize. This is not going to be the deep dive tech spec type review. If you are looking for that, I'm sorry, but this video is probably not going to be that. It's an e-reader. At the end of the day, the specs are not all that different from any other e-reader. The real difference here is going to be its size, which we will talk about at great length in this video. So starting off with the things that I like about it, its size. This will fit in your pocket perfectly. There's no pocket probably that this is not going, well, very few pockets, okay, that this is not going to fit in. Very few purses this is not going to fit in. If you want an e-reader that you really can take anywhere, this is going to be it. And as far as selling points go, that has to be the greatest selling point for this device. It's roughly the size of my iPhone 15. I mean, in fact, it probably is exactly the size. I mean, look at super scientific comparison here. As usual on the channel, it's pretty much the same size as my iPhone 15 Pro Max. The display is about the same size. It's got a little more bezel than, for example, an iPhone 15 Pro Max, but it's the same size. Now this one I'm going to call it a Pro, but I'm very conflicted about it, hence why I said this video is probably going to be all over the place. It has Android 11, and you have access to the Google Play Store. And on the surface, that is a huge pro. You can download the Kindle app, the Kobo app, you can download Libby, Hoopla. Basically any and every book app you might ever want, you can have, making this the ultimate e-reader in theory. You have no limits, right? You can read books from anywhere and everywhere, and I think that's awesome, and I think that's a huge pro. But at the same time, I think it's kind of a con, because yes, it's nice to have access to all those different apps, and if it was just that, I think it would make a lot of sense, but I see a lot of times this device being advertised as the e-reader that you can play Fruit Ninja or whatever the latest game is on the App Store. It's been a while for me, but you can play whatever game or app you want to play. You can watch YouTube videos on this thing, and the question I have is why? Why would you want that on this? It's not going to be good. It's not going to look good. You're not going to want to do it. So why do it? If you've got a smartphone, and I'm willing to bet you probably do, then just use that for everything you would want to use a smartphone for. So pro and con, if you just want access to different book apps, it's amazing. But if you want to try to use it for other things, don't. I would not do that. And the reason that I ultimately called this a pro was I do like that you can, in a pinch, swap over to something that you might need to do. So if you just finished your book and you want to rate it on Goodreads, you can just tap a couple buttons and you're doing it on this device. Another pro is that it is, for an e-reader, pretty speedy. So usually my biggest complaint with all e-readers, and it's not really a genuine complaint because it's what you expect in an e-reader, is that they're just slow and clunky and not really a joy to use for anything other than pressing a button to advance the page and keep reading. But this device is pretty quick. And then another pro that is really just an extension of the last pro is that you can listen to audiobooks on this device. It does have speakers built in. I know other e-readers advertise that they can, play audiobooks, but you need to have a Bluetooth speaker separately. This one has that speaker built in. Is it the world's best speaker ever? No, but you can listen to an audiobook on your e-reader. And then my next pro, which again is kind of a con, but mostly a pro, is that the display is really, really good. I mean, that's the big pro part. It's a clear, crisp display that I've never really had any issues with when reading a book. Again, if you're trying to watch YouTube videos, you're going to be disappointed. But reading is super clear, and it's just a really quality display. But kind of the con side to that, and this is very personal to just me, is it's kind of overly complicated. So you have like a million different options. You can adjust a million different things. And to some people that might be super important. But to me, my little baby brain just kind of got overwhelmed, and like, I don't know what the difference is between all these options. Like, what is ultra fast versus HD versus, whatever. I don't know what this is. Like, just make the screen good and I'll read on it. But if you know what all that stuff means, it might be nice to have all those features. But to me, it just kind of seemed a little overkill for reading words on a screen. Another huge pro is this one little button that you have on the side that allows you infinite possibilities. So it comes with a customizable button that you can make do pretty much anything. And I think that's super cool. That's something that I wish more devices had. I know my iPhone has something that is supposed to be that, but you can really only do like 3 things. This is, I mean, you can pretty much make the button do whatever you want. And I think that's a super nifty little idea. And then another cool thing on the hardware side is that you can actually add more storage. So out of the box, this thing probably has more storage than you would need if you're using it as an e-reader. I suppose if you start downloading audiobooks, though, your storage would fill up pretty quickly. But it actually has an SD slot that allows you to add more storage if you need it. And I think that's just a cool, very practical feature that I wish more devices had. And then another thing I'll mention too is that it is Bluetooth capable, meaning that you can connect other devices to it. So a moment ago I talked about how the built-in speaker is perfectly serviceable. It's a fine speaker, but if you wanted to listen to an audiobook or even a podcast or a video or whatever, something you might want to listen to, you can connect some Bluetooth headphones or a speaker and listen to it that way. And I think that's just cool that it's got Bluetooth built in. So are there other pros we can mention with this device? Absolutely, but I think those are the biggest ones, the biggest things that it's got going for it. So let's move on now to the cons. And the biggest con with this device is that I just don't get it. And if you're a big fan of the Boox Palma watching this, you're probably thinking that is absolutely true. He doesn't get it. Maybe I'm just the old man on his front porch, yelling at the kids to stay off his lawn. But I just feel like if you want an e-reader, get an e-reader. If you want a tablet, get a tablet. If you want a smartphone, right? I mean, I don't know why this thing is trying to combine certain elements of those 3. And it's, in my opinion, not doing any of them particularly well, other than, I mean, it's a great device for reading text on. But it's got features like the camera, I know, is meant to scan documents, but realistically, I mean, I'll show you the camera. It's not great. I don't know why you would want this device if you have a smartphone also in your pocket. Just take that out, take the picture, and use a much better camera. I don't know why you would need full access to the Google Play Store. I mean, I get it. Obviously, you're going to have it or you're not going to have it. But it just seems kind of silly to have some of these features that are not going to work well on this device. And then my next big con, kind of in line with that, is the price. So I feel like there are so many features on this thing that were not necessary that they could have just left out to make the device more reasonably priced. So it's $280, basically $300 for this thing. Compare that to the Kindle Paperwhite, for example, which is by far the most popular e-reader out right now. That is twice as much for a smaller screen and a couple more options that you probably aren't going to want to use. So you're really paying a premium for a smaller device. And again, if that's super important to you, it might be worth it. But for the average person, I don't think the price and these features that the average person's probably not going to use, other than speakers and being able to listen to audiobooks, is really justified. And then a big con also is the battery life. This thing, if you're reading heavy on it, is going to last less than a week for sure, whereas the Kindle Paperwhite, for example, is going to last you 2.5 to 3 weeks, obviously depending on some different settings. And then the last con that I'll also mention probably is the operating system. So there's nothing wrong with the operating system. It uses Android 11. As an Apple person myself, obviously I've got some bias, but it's not a bad operating system. But the problem is that pretty soon that operating system is just going to be, number one, obsolete, and there won't be any support for it. And number two, I've heard some things about outdated Android operating systems being kind of a security risk. I've heard people say, don't use your personal email or put any real sensitive information on here. For that reason, I don't know how much of a security risk there really is, but something to be aware of. And then one last thing that's neither a pro nor a con, but is just kind of an observation. While this looks like a smartphone, if it has not been abundantly clear to this point, it is not a smartphone. But it does kind of feel like a missed opportunity where they could have just put a SIM card slot in this thing, and allowed it to function as kind of a minimalist's dream of a smartphone where you can text, call, read books, make a quick Google search, that kind of thing. I think that would have been really, really cool. Is that a con or a pro? No, but maybe in the future we'll get something like that. Obviously, that's going to increase the price pretty significantly, I'm sure. But all in all, I don't really know what to do with this device. I like it for what it is, but I don't know what it is, if that makes sense, which I know it does not. I think for the price, it's just not reasonable for most people for what it is. But if you have it, I mean, Boox sent me this, I would use it for on-the-go travel. But other than that, I don't know. I just find myself reaching for a full-sized e-reader if I'm at home because it just kind of makes sense. So I don't know. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts on this thing. I apologize, this video was kind of all over the place because my thoughts on this thing are kind of all over the place. It is a cool little device, but I just don't know. I just don't get it fully. But let me know in the comments below. Do you have one and do you love it? Tell me why I'm wrong. Or does this thing kind of confuse you like it confuses me? Let me know in the comments below, please. I always appreciate hearing from you. But that's it for this video. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next one.